pie, huh? Turk, huh? Let's go. Watch me. Turk, watch me.
Now I'm hungry.
Yes, I am too.
We would be honored if you would join us.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? I always ask that of all my prey. Go ahead. Make my day.
This is Sparta!
First rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
I'm Batman.
Yeah, I got a question. Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
You are now listening to the Turk and Raz podcast. We bring you our thoughts and reactions to what is happening in pop culture today, and we go back in time to revisit classic films of the 80s and 90s.
The man with no name carries a long gun. He's going to trigger a whole new style in adventure. A Fistful of Dollars is the first motion picture of its kind. It won't be the last. A Fistful of Dollars from United Artists Technicolor.
All right, we're here for another retro roundtable.
Very retro. Wow. We dug deep for this one.
We dug deep. Okay, A Fistful of Dollars is the 1964 spaghetti western film directed by Sergio Leone and starring Clint Eastwood in his first leading role. The film was an international co-production between Italy, West Germany, and Spain. It was filmed on a low budget, reported to be $200,000, and Eastwood was paid $15,000 for the role.
Wow.
Pretty cheap, eh?
That's cheap.
Funny, in the movie, his character says he doesn't work for cheap, but at the time...
He did.
Yes, he did. As I said, the movie was released in Italy in 1964 and then in the United States in 1967. There was many already produced spaghetti westerns, but this is the one that really initiated the popularity of the spaghetti western genre. It was followed by A Few Dollars More, and the most famous of the three, The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, which also starred Eastwood. You're probably more familiar with The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, I would assume.
Yeah, just by seeing and hearing it a lot, yeah.
Collectively, the films are known as the Dollars Trilogy or the Man with No Name Trilogy. After United Artists publicity campaign, this is the American company that bought the rights. They refer to Eastwood's character in all three films as the Man with No Name, because essentially his character, if you think about it in A Fistful, they call him Joe, but some people back then in certain countries, they call people, hey Joe, but it's not really their name.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was like watching this movie going, okay, what the fuck is his name?
Yeah. He doesn't really have a name.
Yeah.
They play it like in the campaign that all three movies that he's the same character. Yes, he has the same outfit, technically he's not the same character. In A Few Dollars More, he's called Manco, which means kind of like bounty hunter or something. Then he's called Goldie. You don't know if that's his name. That's just the name that a character gives him. So, the Man with No Name trilogy. All three films were later released in sequence in the United States, like I said, in 1967, and this
catapult
Eastwood into stardom. The film would go on to make $20 million at the box office, so you would think in 1967 to 1967, that's some big bank. And that's just this movie. The film has been identified as an unofficial remake of Akira Kurosawa's film Yojimbo, which was released in 1961, which resulted in a successful lawsuit by Taiho Yojimbo's production company. The story goes, basically, they made it a Western version of Yojimbo. And there's a funny story where Akira Kurosawa actually wrote a letter to Sergio Leone and like complimented him that it's a really good movie. I like your story. And at first, Sergio Leone was actually quite taken back because it's Akira Kurosawa, one of his heroes. But he basically said, yeah, you basically made my movie. So, and the result of that, actually, when they settled in court, Akira Kurosawa would get actually all the rights that were, say, in Japan or wherever, he'd get all the money. So whatever it made there, he'd get all the fees and stuff. And then they had to like rename it Magnificent Stranger.
Tell them to bring me my money.
The biggest thing with this movie, the traditional Western hero would evolve into an anti-hero thanks to the impact of these films. And the entire genre would be revisualized, paving the way for films such as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Wild Bunch. Fistful of Dollars was an Italian, like I said, German, Spanish co-production, so there was a significant language barrier on set.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
Sergio Leone himself did not speak English. Eastwood would communicate with the Italian cast and crew members mostly through actor and stunt man Benito Staffellini, who also acted as an uncredited interpreter for the production and would later appear in Leone's other pictures. Similar to the other Italian films shot at the time, all footage was filmed silent, and the dialogue and sound effects were dubbed over in post-production. So Clint Eastwood, when he first went out there, he's so used to the Hollywood set where it was quiet because noise was a big thing. There, they had music, there's things going by because they didn't care.
Yeah, so, I noticed that. I could tell that they shot the film silent and then had them record their lines over top of, because you could just tell like the voices never matched.
No, and Eastwood would later muse that this was also tricky because continuity was not as important as he was used to when working in Hollywood. So you had to make sure you remembered or didn't lose your script and dialogue, because when they went to like post-production or they went to go kind of the voiceover, you'd be duped.
Yep.
The visual story of this, A Fistful of Dollars became the first film to exhibit Leone's famously distinctive style of visual direction, which was influenced by both John Ford's cinematic landscaping and the Japanese method and direction perfected by, like I said earlier, Akira Kurosawa. Leone gave an operatic feel to the Western, and so there are many examples of extreme close-ups on the faces of different characters functioning like iris in a traditional opera. The rhythm, the emotion, the communication within scenes can be attributed to Leone's meticulous framing of his close-ups. It is said Leone's close-ups are more akin to portraits, often lit with Renaissance-type lighting effects, and are considered by some as pieces of design in their own right. I would agree with that, wouldn't you?
I would.
Eastwood was instrumental in creating the Man with No Name's distinctive visual style. He brought black jeans from a sports shop on Hollywood Boulevard. The hat came from Santa Monica wardrobe firm, and the trademark cigars from a Beverly Hills store. He also brought props from Rawhide, including a crowbar-handled Colt, a gun belt, and spurs. The poncho was acquired in Spain. It was Leone and costume designer Carlo Simi who decided on the Spanish poncho for the Man with No Name. Eastwood himself is a non-smoker, and he felt that the foul taste of the cigar in his mouth put him in the right frame of mind for the character.
Interesting.
That's why he always looks like he's... Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's nice you laughing.
Soundtrack of the movie. The film's music was written by one and only Ennio Morricone, and he's famous for so many movies out there, and he's a longtime collaborator of Sergio Leone's. And actually, Quentin Tarantino actually uses a lot of his score in his movies. If you think The Kill Bill, Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight.
I really love the music in this film. This was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, was just listening to the music itself.
Some of the music was written before the film, which is unusual back in the day. Leone's films were made like that because he wanted the music to be an important part of it, and he often kept the scenes longer simply because he didn't want the music to end. That's why the films are so slow, because of the music. Wait till you watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. A little tidbit there, it wasn't used in the completed film. They recorded lyrics to Morricone's main theme for the film as a movie tie-in in the American release. I've never heard the lyrics to that, but it'd be kind of interesting because a lot of the score that Morricone did had lyrics to it, like, you know, Django, like the theme song for Django Unchained. That's Morricone. Let's just dive a little bit into the cast here. Clint Eastwood, obviously, as Joe, the stranger, the man with no name. They had him in the script a lot as the stranger. And as we talked about, it was an international mixed cast. Marina Koch as Mary So, the female.
Marisol.
Gina Maria Valente as Ramon Rojo. A really good Italian actor. He was really famous for his strong views in socialism. So he's a real big time activist and a really good actor. He actually plays the main villain in For a Few Dollars More. And you're going to notice if you watch the other ones is that Sergio Leone uses like the same actors playing different roles, but they almost look like the same.
That's
roles.
cool.
It's pretty cool. I like that. W. Lusky as the sheriff, John Baxter. Sergent Rupp as Esteban Rojo, the younger brother of the Rojos. Joe Edger as Piero. I'm probably butchering some of these names, so don't go hard on me.
As you will.
Antonio Prieto as Don Miguel Rojo. He actually, in real life, was a really good singer as the Don Benito Rojo, the oldest brother. His potty complexion, a real landscape. You could tell Sergio Leone had a lot of fun having the camera on his face, the close-ups. They told so much. And then it's Margarita Lozano as the Consuelo Baxter, the true leader of it, the matriarch. The story of this, it's a pretty simple one. The stranger, Eastwood, a mysterious drifter with mercenary instincts, arrives in a small Mexican desert town of San Miguel near the border. He finds the town virtually deserted due to a bloody rivalry between the Rojo and the Baxter clans, two families at war, over control of illicit and highly profitable gun-running activities in the region. The stranger makes his presence known by shooting 4 bullies in the street and then proceeds to deceive both the Rojos and the Baxters by working for the side as a hired gun. He manages to intensify the war between the two clans, which reduces their numbers significantly. But his deception is discovered by the brutal Rojo, Ramon, when the stranger rescues the peasant woman, Marisol, who has been forcibly kept from her family to serve as Ramon's mistress. The stranger is beaten in an inch of his life, but escapes with the help of his only 2 allies, the coffin maker, one of my favorites, and the saloon keeper, Salviento, who looks like Pinocchio's Geppetto in this movie.
You are a real boy.
Meanwhile, the Rojos gain the upper hand and ruthlessly slaughter the heads of the Baxter clan, John Baxter and Mrs. Baxter, along with the entire family or gang. The Rojo's victory is short-lived, however, as the stranger emerges to confront Ramon and his siblings. In a tense gun battle, he uses a homemade bulletproof shield to save himself and annihilates his enemies. He then rides off to parts unknown, still shrouded in mystery, but now greatly enriched by the fortunes of the devastated clans. So that's the gist of that movie.
Baxter's over there. Rojo's there. Me right in the middle.
This is your first time watching this movie at this stage in your life. What's your thoughts? What's your experience? Because this is an old movie. This is a classic, but this is a movie that I think a lot of modern people kind of still miss.
Yeah, it is. It was a different watch for me for sure. I'm not used to watching Westerns at all. Well, I mean, I guess modern ones, but old 1964 type. Yeah, it was different. Like I was really trying to watch it really closely and try and focus on like how the director, what kind of direction the director was going. And I just want to get a really good feel for the movie. And I was trying to really hard, like pay attention to everything going on. And I thought I was doing a good job, but then for some reason, I don't know, maybe just the movie being a little bit slow and serious, maybe I lost focus, and I started to get a little bored. But again, I know how important this movie is for you, and so I tried like my hardest to watch it and give it a go and try and enjoy it. And parts of it I really did enjoy, but just some of the slow parts I think just took me a little bit out. I wasn't used to, this type of pacing of movie.
Well, we're in modern times so used to movies being really fast paced that movies like this back then and all those years are very slow paced.
Don't get me wrong. Like I have watched slower movies, I've watched them slow and fast, but I don't know, just for whatever it was, I don't know. The first time watching it now just maybe didn't resonate with me as much as it does with you back in the day, because I've never seen this before.
Well, you're more resonant to movies like Can't Buy Me Love versus this. Where me, like
exactly, exactly.
To me, I enjoy Can't Buy Me Love, but to me, that's like comparing horse manure to ice cream. Like, this is like if you're a film lover, to me, because these are movies that. It's like Star Wars. You have to watch them multiple times to really appreciate it. Now, again, if it doesn't resonate to you and you found it kind of boring or you weren't into it, that's cool. Like
parts of it.
It's not for everybody.
When things started getting going, then it got better for me. It really did. And maybe I need to watch this another couple of times to really understand everything going on, just to appreciate it like you do.
Because I had a really early introduction to Sergio Leone. I was introduced to him through my father, but it was like the good, the bad, and the ugly. But a lot of that had to do with being a Clint Eastwood fan. For my life, I tried to watch every movie of his.
Right.
And at a certain point, I can't speak for other people or for myself. I got to a certain point in an age where I wanted to watch like movies like this. So I'm like, okay, I like the good, bad, and ugly. But then when I discovered actually there's 2 other previous movies, I'm like, I got to watch those. Yeah, I would say that The Fistful of Dollars is probably the weakest out of the 3, but it lays groundwork with the style of Sergio Leone. It sets up Clint Eastwood as a leading person, because up until this point, he was just a co-star on Rawhide, and his career was not really going anywhere. He just kind of took this on a whim.
Yeah, I definitely have an appreciation for the film. I understand how special it is for the music or the movie industry, and just how deep in lore it is, and how special it is to a lot of people. And I appreciate that. Like I said, I'll probably have to watch this another time or two to really get enthralled with it, and then later on get into the whole trilogy.
What makes this movie so fascinating is up until that point, you had your kind of white knight kind of good cowboy. You had your John Wayne, where you kind of knew who was good, who was bad. There was a morality in the protagonist, that he stood on the side of good. What was so inventive of this character, the stranger, the man with no name, is right from the opening scene, he's just riding on his mule. He sees shit happening. This little kid who's getting chased, like these thugs, this Mexican gang, are shooting bullets at his feet. And he just stays, he doesn't intervene. In like other movies, like a John Wayne or a Gary Cooper, they would run to his rescue. Or this, he just is idle. And it kind of sets up, and really, like you said, you don't really know his motivation. Like, he's there to profit. He does help, because when you see later in the film, when he helps Marisol and her son Jesus and the father, Joseph, I think, she asks him, like, why are you helping me? And he's like, I knew someone like you. So it's almost like that Heath Ledger Joker, where he tells these stories about how these 3 different versions of how he got his scars, but you don't know if there's truth to them. And you're like, okay, this is a character. Was he the kid, or was he like one of the lovers? It was apparent he lost
his
them.
mother was
his mother, or it was him and his wife, and he lost them. You don't know, but I like the mystique. That's what's so fascinating with this, and also that you learn real quick that he's really good with his gun, and he's a force to be reckoned with. And you see that, like, no one really kind of wants to cross him, but like Ramon says, is that he doesn't like him because, he's not only is he's, a hired gun, and he's probably the best shot he has. He's very intelligent. He's just as fast with his mind that he is with his gun. She should not be trifled with. But also he is subject to fallibility, right? Because his planning and plotting come undone throughout the film where he kind of gets beat up.
He does. That was a very intense part of the movie is when he gets his ass kicked. Yeah.
And I know this movie, like if you look at the blood and you look at the effects, because it was a very modest budget, like they were very limited. Like one of the scenes, like it's a great introduction to Ramon because the movie sets him up. Okay, you're like, you meet the Rojos and you meet the two brothers, but the middle brother out of the three is the most powerful one. And then when we meet them, when the army is going to exchange their gold for guns, they get betrayed. And that's our first introduction on that big Uzi gun. And he starts firing and you don't see the blood spurt. It's a little bit, I think when I first watched the movie, I was a little bit jarred because you don't see the blood. And I'm so used to squibs or blood or all types of effects. But this, they would put blood in this, but for big scenes like this, because you'd see the actors when they got shot, they would grab their head to let you know where they got shot or in the chest. Like you notice that?
Yeah. Hey, no, you know what? That stuff I put aside because I know it's 1964 and I was totally cool with that. I wasn't going to judge the film because they couldn't produce real looking bullet holes in a body like that. Come on. Like I understand. And so, back then, the big dramatic death scenes when someone, like you said, when someone gets shot, they put their hands on their chest and they do this big flailing and and then they slowly fall to their death. Like, it's cool, it's funny, and it's nostalgic, but we know that we don't do that anymore just because the technology makes death scenes so much better. But I still appreciate it, and I don't care about that stuff, but just basically it was just all strictly story for me.
And I like how he befriends the saloon guy and the Undertaker. He's asking him about the town, and he tells him like this is basically, it's a ghost town. Like there's profit, but there's two leaders there, the Rojos and the Baxters. And right off the bat, it sets you up who the character is and what he's kind of about is like, okay, he tells him, get 3 coffins ready. And then he confronts the guys that shoot at him and his mule. Like, and you notice his character doesn't, his mood, his temperament kind of always stays even keel. And I think that's why you can resonate. And I think this is like the beginnings of characters like we'd see in other movies, like a Stallone movie or Arnold movie, or a certain character in the face of like odds, they never kind of lose their way or they're cool. Like they, you know what I mean? They just like, they kind of just ease into it. And he's like, okay, you guys, I'm going to talk to you here. And my mule is upset. And I like those lines, and it shows you Clint Eastwood, his dry humor is like sardonic. He's like, I know you guys were just playing around, but mule doesn't know. So if you apologize, and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, you want us to apologize to your mule?
Your mule and stuff. And he's like, I think you don't get it. And then he gets serious. He's like, I don't think it's funny you laughing. And, but he's still kind of playing that the mule thinks you're laughing at him.
I don't think it's nice you laughing. See, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him.
And then he draws on them and he takes all 4 out. And that funny gag, my mistake.
My mistake, 4 coffins.
4. Like it's pretty awesome. And right there, okay, here you go. And just the landscape, like I think the sets, the detail for this movie, because Sergio Leone is a lover of classic Western movies. Like John Ford, like I said, he wanted to do his own spin on it. What he really did, and what I really like about this one, if you look everywhere, all the people they're sweating, they're unshaven, because a lot of Westerns at that point, the characters were shaved. They look clean cut. Maybe the villain would be, but like protagonist, he looked clean cut, like, okay, you trust this guy because he shaves. We're here, he's unshaved, unkept.
What I really liked about the introduction to the gravedigger / coffin builder is when he's in the saloon and he's talking with the guy and he's having a drink, and then he's telling him about the town, and then he opens that little sliding window, that wooden, window or whatever. He's back there pounding nails into a coffin. He's building away. I thought that was actually a pretty funny introduction.
Yeah, and then he tells him, you'll be a customer.
yeah, exactly.
He's really good. He can just look at you and he can know your height. And
yeah, he's really good at judging your size, so he knows what to build.
And he brings him on, like a little bit of his adventures when they go and spy on the army, and then when they get decimated. But then, okay, now he's kind of playing the two, so he asks the Undertaker to bring him 2 dead bodies, and he dresses them up in soldiers, and he kind of plots them at their graveside, and then gets the information out.
The dead can be very useful sometimes.
To both parties, and where they go there, and they kind of decimate themselves. And like basically he's getting them to weaken each faction, which is really smart. And he's getting paid.
Yep.
You know, I like that. You're going to, he's like, why are you giving us this $500 and then $500? And there's some great stuff that
he's there to make money.
He's there to make money. Yeah. He comes out of it good. Also, but not only that, just with the action, the humor, and the stunts, there's a lot of intentional religious symbolism, starting with the peasant family as the thinly veiled stand-in for Mary's soul, Joseph, their son's name Jesus.
Dear Lord baby Jesus, or as our brothers to the south call you, Jesus, we thank you so much.
Another example is the stranger being crucified, really. Like, he gets beat up by the Rojos. Like, basically it's his death. And then virtually he's dying. And then he's resurrected in that mine shaft for his final showdown. There's also that meal sequence at the Rojo's house when it looks like it's staged to resemble like the paintings of the Last Supper. Clint Eastwood characters firing at that armor, and then Ramon there fires with his shotgun there, and then they kind of have, he tells him about that Mexican proverb, when a man in a pistol meets a man with a rifle, he's a dead man. That's actually not an old Mexican proverb, that's bullshit, but it kind of sets up what's going to happen at the end, at the final showdown. Also in the final act, when he appears to confront them, there is that supernatural feel to the stranger, because I think throughout the film he's enigmatic, and like, you know, he's not right there, but after he gets beat up and maybe like thought for dead, or he disappears, he kind of almost transcends when he returns. Like, I mean, he uses the dynamite to blow up to just catch their attention, and he comes back. And he's moving very slow and deliberate. And Ramon is shooting him. And he keeps shooting him, and he keeps reminding him about the heart.
The heart, Ramon. Don't forget the heart. For the heart, or you'll never stop me.
Because that's part of it, is like a decoy, right? Like, it's like, you know, you think Ramon would shoot him in the head, but he keeps telling him in the heart, reminds him, and like, he keeps shooting him in the heart. So those allegories are riddled in these movies. And the movie is very brutal too, like the violence towards everybody. Clint Eastwood's character is shooting people. There's massacres. You see the Rojos, when they finally take out the Baxters, they light it on fire with the whiskey, and then they just shoot everybody. And then there's like that one instance where, you know, Mrs. Baxter, she's yelling at them and what they did, and little brother Esteban shoots him. And you see, really well done, crafted with the camera, you see Ramon, like, it's almost like he's looking at him like, is it disapproval or is it approval? I thought that was really neat.
One of the funny things I noticed in the film were the long stretches of B-roll with the horse riding when Joe was, you know, kind of sneaking about, and he was trying to beat the Rojas back to town, and he was zigging and zagging, and they were doing the straight line with the horses, and it was just like 5 minutes of like horseback riding through the canyons and stuff, and it was, you know, it was really cool and nostalgic and whatever, but that was kind of neat.
And you can clearly tell that wasn't Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, no, and you get like, I was just thinking like, man, all that running in the, you know, in the tough landscape for the horses, that must have been really hard back then for the horses to run on that stuff, because so many like loose rocks around, and the trails were thin. And like, I know nowadays, you know, maybe it might be harder to make a Western with a bunch of horseback riding, because I know they do everything they can to try and protect horses for filmmaking. But I wonder back then, like, how many horses maybe possibly got injured. You know, that's kind of a...
I'm pretty sure some got injured. Like,
yeah.
Like you said, this was kind of a loosey-goosey kind of film. I mean, it's because I think, but yeah, like the horse ride, and you can tell that they sped up the horse. Like you can,
yeah, they 2 times the film.
2 times the films.
Yeah, the speed. Yeah,
because I think they did this movie in Technoscope. They used the film where you would get double, and also they were kind of worried about like the filming there in the, because a lot of the people working on the film didn't really understand like the equipment, so it was kind of a staple in Italian westerns, those movies, that a lot of the film would get destroyed in like the editing.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball.
So they were kind of worried about that. So Sergio Leone would film a lot of extra scenes, just, you know, because you didn't know if you'd lose shit.
Yeah, no, it was quite interesting. Also, another one thing that I noticed is that very rare did you ever see anybody reload their guns when they were firing. Like rare, not a lot. No,
you didn't. Yeah, you saw here or there.
Lots of shots going off, but no reloads.
Lots going, and I think a lot of it has to do with like the cutting of the scenes.
Potentially, yeah.
So you can kind of let that go.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I find like if you watch like a lot of movies like Rambo and some of those action movies we saw in the 80s, you're like, do they ever reload?
Right.
But you're right. Yeah. Like, you know, if you're looking, you can like, well, yeah.
Like he's got a handgun and he's got maybe 6 shooters, so he's fired like 50 shots already.
Yeah.
Or 15.
Like I don't think he ever did that himself, but like even when he shoots the 4 people at once, you're like, he only technically has 6 shots.
Yeah.
And it always feels like he's fired the whole round.
That's right. Yeah.
But you don't know. So you're like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Just one, little nitpick.
Like I didn't really see it because I think there's some stuff, but I see so many other movies with their guns and reload. I'm like,
it does happen a lot.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good in this movie, but you know, it is the times.
No, I appreciate it.
With these, you can tell Sergio Leone was not comfortable with like female characters because he kind of treats them like male characters in his movies. Like even just like the matriarch of the Baxters, you know, she's kind of like a dude in a way.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like and you notice like there's really no love interest in this movie. We're so used to like Hollywood. There's always like a man and a woman. Where this, like, he doesn't get the girl.
No. There's a little, you know, where he asks like, oh, who is she?
Yeah.
You know, so that's about it. That's like pretty much it.
And it's really sad, really, like what happened to that family that Ramon accuses Joseph that he was cheating at cards. And so he doesn't kill his family, that he gets Marisol as his mistress. So you can imagine like how crazy that is. Because I think he's got 10 toes up with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, you know, back to, it still never makes sense to me when Ramon has her go to that halfway house and it has an armed guard there, that her son and her husband are the house across from her. Like, I'm like, how are they there? Like, what happened there?
Yeah.
Like, how come it's like a little too convenient.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I don't know. I was trying to think, is that like the same spot where we run in the beginning of the movie with the Clint Eastwood character by the well?
Yeah. That's what I think. Yeah.
It is, yeah, because you're like, well, why are they there? Because it doesn't make sense. And do they know they're there? But like, it didn't make sense to me, but it's never been explained.
Another one, this one probably could have been avoided, maybe, is, you know, like near the end there where they light that building on fire and everyone comes running out the door and they're picking them off one by one, like you're shooting ducks in a row or whatever. Just, I was thinking to myself, don't they have a back door?
Yeah.
Like they all had to come out that front door, all of them. And they're getting picked off one by one and bodies are starting to pile up on top of each other right on the deck. And they're still coming out. Like, hello, did you not see your buddies like lying in front of you at the door and you're still running out? Don't shoot. Yeah. And then you know what happens?
Yeah. There was a lot of like plot convenience. And like, even when the stranger or Joe, he's escaping from the Rojos and they're outside searching for him and he's right underneath the deck there. And he's like, search everywhere. So you search everywhere, but underneath like the walkways.
Wow, they never think of that.
I get they wouldn't think of in the coffins because they're probably superstitious, but you're like, search everywhere and he's right underneath them. Like Ramon's right there.
They probably couldn't understand him hiding under a deck, I guess. Yeah.
I guess you're like, okay, that's a little.
Yeah, so there's a few.
There's a little bit.
But you know what? I still laughed. I chuckled at them, you know, but it was still decent.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you have to, because like really, if you're going to nitpick and look for stuff like that, you're going to see it in almost every movie.
Yes.
Like, you know, you can find it like Star Wars. I mean, noise in space. It shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, you can nitpick every film.
You can. Yeah. And it's a little bit easier on these older films because there's a lot more liberties. They're not as fine-tuned as a lot of movies are today.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I know filmmaking had been going on for a while at this point too, but still, they're still learning, and they're at the limits of technology, and still maybe storytelling still needed some work, but it's still appreciable.
Absolutely. Kind of have to just let that go.
Yeah.
I like watching a film like this, the way it's shot, the sets, the cinematography, because it is dated. Because like, if you think about it, this movie, it was a fast track of being released. Like, the film was like filmed in 1964 and it was released in 1964, where we deal in a lot of films that it takes years for them to come out, where this is like they film them and it's out right away. So you can imagine the shooting, the editing, the mixing, and the score. It's crazy. It comes out real fast.
Yeah, I can see it too, because they're literally, back then, they're editing by like taking a pair of scissors and cutting some film.
Yeah.
And then taping it back together. Like, that's pretty much what editing was back then.
And you think about it, because this is like a co-production with different countries being involved. Sergio Leone could not speak English. So,
right.
and Clint Eastwood would talk about that he just remembers this fat, kind of chubby Italian guy with these glasses, and he'd wear like a cowboy hat and he'd be like, "Watch me, Clint," and then he would reenact what he wanted him to do, and then so he'd get it interpreted.
Okay, yeah.
But he says, because if you saw Sergio Leone, he was this chubby little Italian guy, and he loved to eat. Like, because they would, like Clint Eastwood said, sometimes they would spend more time eating and drinking when filming these. Like, so there was a little bit, lax in some ways, but it's just a different way of making film.
Yeah, I could see how they could turn around a film really quickly, and by filming and then producing it and releasing it within the same year. I could see how a lot of them could do that, just because the production was very low and there wasn't much to do for post-production, like I said, and you can get it out there quick.
Well, and at that time, the Western was like a dying genre. Like, they, in the 50s, they made like 200 and some films like a year, and it went down to like, by the end, like 15. It was dying until the Italian Western, especially with Sergio Leone and Clint Eastwood, it revolutionized, and then there was all kinds of copycats.
Right.
Like, and then it just went into full gear. And another thing is, like, we're so used to growing, because you and I, we grew up in the 80s, so we're used to like lead male action stars, like kicking butt and taking names. I think a lot of them owe a lot of it to Clint Eastwood's character in this movie. Because he's a guy, like, he just comes in and he kicks ass. He gets his ass kicked here or there, but he always, he outthinks. I think that's what's interesting.
Yep. No, you got to start somewhere, and heroes got to come from somewhere, right? So.
And another thing, I don't know if you noticed, the Mary Soul, her character doesn't wear footwear throughout the whole film. She's barefooted,
right?
Which is kind of interesting. And you can really see some of the bad dub, especially with the little kid Jesus
when he's crying.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. But if you watch the film and you see the lips and the way they slowed it down, the characters, like, they're not speaking English, but the way he has their movement, it looks like they are spouting the words in English.
It does. Yeah, it's pretty close.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, the dubbing didn't bother me. I thought it was done fairly well. And a lot of the speaking scenes, you don't even really get too close to really notice the discrepancy. But I thought it was all right.
Yeah, as far as like a little bit of our analysis, that's all I have to say. I think it's our time for our favorite new segment, Did You Know?
All right, let's do it.
All right, Big Turk. Did you know Clint Eastwood was 33 years old when he took a professional risk to make this film?
I did not.
Yeah, so that goes back to what we're talking about, how even in Hollywood, the male stars don't really come into their own a little bit later, where the females tend to be, they're pretty young in their early 20s. They tend to kind of jump to stardom.
Right.
When he was first offered the part, he actually said absolutely not. However, he did read the script. Though the script he had was translated in a strange English by a group of Italian people who didn't speak English well. Either way, Clint Eastwood saw something in it, a chance to design another type of character, and you can tell he was so already done with Rawhide, because I think he was already on that show for 7 years or something.
Okay.
At the time, he heard horror stories about working on low-budget Italian films. Nevertheless, he signed on, and the rest, like I said, is history. Sergio Leone wanted actually Henry Fonda or James Coburn or Charles Bronson as the character. Clint Eastwood was actually the 11th choice, and that's because he was way cheaper. And I think Sergio Leone saw him on, I don't know if it was the 91st episode of Rawhide, where you're like, okay, maybe I'll try Eastwood. Henry Fonda's agent found the script so appalling that he refused to show it to the iconic star. So he didn't even get to see it. Ironically, Fonda and Bronson would later appear in one of Leone's other spaghetti westerns, Once Upon a Time in the West, which I hope we cover. Fonda actually plays the big bad villain in that, and Bronson actually plays the hero. It's a good movie. It's different, but I recommend it. James Coburn would also appear in Leone's other, it's more of a revolution type film, Duck You Sucker, or it's also known as Fistful of Dynamite, another recommended watch. The film was actually originally going to be called The Magnificent Stranger, and even briefly it was Ray the Magnificent. The main character was indeed called Ray in the script. He was 35 to 40 years old, an ex-Confederate sergeant. The story began with a map of the Rio Bravo on the Texas-Mexico border, 1872. Actually, here's another thing. Eastwood would delete chunks of his dialogue, as he always felt if the character explained everything as in the original script, he wouldn't have any mystery at all to his character, so he became one of the few actors in history of cinema to fight for fewer lines, and he was right. Also, did you know that Eastwood arrived in Italy with some well-founded trepidation about the low-budget venture? He worried that there would be a shortage of appropriate props and costumes, so he brought along some of his wardrobe from Rawhide. I kind of listed what they were: boots, spurs, holster, pistol guns that he considered good luck charms, as well as he bought a couple of pairs of those black Levi's, and he just bleached them to make them look more cowboy. And his instincts would prove right, as he learned pretty quickly there were no replacements for key props or wardrobe. So if there was a damage or anything went missing during filming, it would become a serious problem. You can imagine? And this is a country he doesn't really know about. Due to budget restrictions, they had to come up with different alternatives to make things work. And I think a lot of films, in a lot of ways, benefit from restrictions. Let's look at Star Wars and many other films. A lot of times, it almost makes a better film. They could not afford many extras, so they worked into the script by having the salon keeper explain to the stranger that the constant battles between the warring Rojos and Baxter clans had turned San Miguel into a town of widows. So yeah, you kind of see there's nobody really in there, but it was a good way to explain it, that everybody's dead or gone. All the men have been either run off or been killed, like I said. Really, aside from the main antagonist and the much oppressed peasant family, the townspeople are basically the town's bell ringer, the saloon keeper, and the old coffin maker. That's it. Really 3 people. Also, the budget was forced them to be innovative in terms of securing props. Eastwood recalls one occasion, Leone spotted a perfect visual for the down in town. You know the tree with the noose at the beginning, hanging from the branch? Leone took several crew members and began cutting down the tree to transport it to the film's location. When the pissed off homeowner demanded to know what they were doing, Leone told them that he represented the local township and the tree posed a hazard for passerbys. He didn't.
Gringo! Heard you wanted to see me.
The Americana's dead.
One of the biggest things Leone changed with this movie was the way he staged action sequences, especially those involving shootouts. Censorship rules in Hollywood prohibited firing gun from being shown in the same frame as the person who is stuck by the bullet. Fortunately, Leone was ignorant of these rules, and Eastwood did nothing to enlighten him. because he knew. As we see in the film, the stranger guns down multiple people. This movie showing people dying sudden and violent deaths from the vantage point of the stranger's pistols. So we didn't see those in Hollywood features. They didn't shoot him in the back or whatever, but this, it shows you. So again, very innovative. Basically, Sergio Leone's legacy, I would say. He was the first modern filmmaker to make really popular films which remain surprising, personal to an extent. His influence on contemporary cinema has been profound, to say the least. You hear referring to him all the time in our podcast. You hear me talking about it. How many times? I think every podcast I almost bring up his name. The modern action hero, films about films, the interplay of music and image, sound and design, it's all there. The work of directors such as Stanley Kubrick, or to George Lucas and John Carpenter, to Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, and of course Clint Eastwood. They're all influenced by Sergio Leone, and I'm sure other filmmakers will be too.
No, that's a great. Did you know?
It's a little heavy, but there's so much to unpack. I recommend, if you want to know more about just the making of these, there's a film historian, Sir Christopher Frayling. I think he's still alive. He has books out there, and maybe we'll put the link there on our YouTube page where you can maybe get a hold of it. But he has so much a wealth of information on this film. It's worth a listen. Like, actually, the making and how these movies came to are just as fascinating as I think the films are.
Right.
To me, this is one of the movies, like, if you like movies and cinema, you like Clint Eastwood, you like westerns, this is a great one to start. Because this is just a nice lead into, to me, this is the Batman Begins. Then you get the Dark Knight, and then you get the Dark Knight Rises. But the difference is that each movie gets better.
Right.
For a few dollars more is better, and then Good, the Bad, the Ugly is just pure cinematic.
That's good.
Masterpiece. Like, the music, it just comes together.
Right on.
Anything else to add there?
No, you covered it, man.
Overall, it was a good experience finally watching a movie like this.
It was a good experience, and I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe I'll catch it again someday and try and take more out of it, and try and improve my experience with it. Yeah,
it depends. Sometimes, like, movies like this, you might not appreciate, but then you watch it again, you might kind of be more appreciative to what they were putting on the screen. But again, it's not for everybody. But it's awesome that you at a later age kind of took a chance to watch this.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. Yeah.
No, it was a fun one to do for our first Clint Eastwood movie. Hoping to do more.
Definitely do more, Clint.
All right, well, that concludes our Fistful of Dollars Retro Roundtable.
Thanks for listening.
You can catch us wherever you get your podcasts, such as Google, Spotify, Podbean, Audible, and Amazon. You can also follow us on Twitter at TurkRaz, as well as YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, smash a like button, and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for notification, and share our videos and podcasts out there.